Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 152.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on true custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques. I create exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores. I struggled last night and this morning with whether or not to post this interview today because of all the turmoil in our country. In the end, I'm making the interview live because I think there are some elements, well, maybe a lot of elements of this interview with Bob Litwin that can help listeners to be a little better today and tomorrow and in the future, in our lives and in our golf. Part of Bob's quotes from Sunday, May 31st was this statement: "It's a tough time. People are on edge and enraged. Seek to understand, to relate, and to find tolerance." Please enjoy this inspiring interview with Bob Litwin, agent for change and author of Live the Best Story of Your Life.
www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Hello, this is Tony Wright with episode 152 of the Golf Improvement Podcast. I want to welcome back today Bob Litwin, who is the author of a terrific book, Live the Best Story of Your Life. Bob and I talked, I think it was about 2 years ago, the first time. Bob's a world championship tennis player, probably not playing much tennis right now. I don't know. We'll see. Performance coach, and I really like this phrase you had on your website, an agent for change. So I think we're going to talk about some really neat stuff today, Bob. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Tony, I'm really glad to be back with you. It's really great. I had such a great time when we talked last time. And, you know, every time I do an interview, I learn a little bit more about what I'm trying to teach. So it's a great opportunity for me as well.
Well, that's cool. That's really neat.
Yeah.
Well, you know, let's catch up a little bit, and I guess a little bit what your life has been like the last few months, because, I mean, that's where everything really is for all of us, right?
Yeah. Well, okay, so interesting, you know, how things happen at certain times, and they just seem to fit into where we might be in our lives. And I think, as you know, I live in Colorado, in Boulder, but I'm from New York, and actually I do coaching for hedge funds in New York.
Yes.
And I have been for the last 5 years, since I moved to Colorado, going to New York every other week for a couple of days. And I've loved it. But then back in about October, I was starting to feel like it's not that I don't like it. It's not that it's too tiring. It's just that it kind of interferes with a certain flow in my life, because every time I turn around, like 8 days after I come back, I'm leaving again. And I don't know, it was just interfering a little. So I was talking to some of these firms and saying, I'd like to be able to do this more as I originally suggested, which is to do it remotely. Well, lo and behold, we go back and forth. And comes the beginning of March. I was in a hotel in New York on March 3rd. That was still early, relatively early, you know, by a week or so. And I hear the guy in the next room coughing his brains out. I wake up the next morning, I go down to the reception desk and I said, check me out, because I got to get out of here. I went directly to the airport, didn't stop at go at all. I just left. I haven't been back in New York since. And my work has been really interestingly better for most of the people that I work with now by doing it remotely. So for me, in one respect, it was a pretty cool thing that happened. But of course, you know, it's a negative that we're forced to stay away from people that we love and care about and friends. And I have 4 of our 8 grandchildren live nearby and 2 of our 5 daughters. And it's, you know, definitely a bummer. But also there were some really okay things that I started to experience. One was the feeling that I was in an endless day. I didn't ever feel like tomorrow or yesterday. I'm just in one long day. And this whole sense of having to get things done, we're busy people, the whole feeling of getting things done started to dissipate, because if I didn't get something done, which of course I never get everything done, who does? If I didn't get something done, my day was just interrupted by like 7 hours of sleep, and then I just kept going. So that was a kind of pleasing experience that was going on for a while. Another thing that I thought I might just mention is that I'm a very content person, and I've been through some adversity in my life and have found ways to be content even in the midst of adversity. That includes tennis matches, competition, but, and other things that were pretty heavy in my life. And I call people all the time. All of my clients, it's interesting, clients don't call me. They pay me, but I end up calling them. There's something about people not wanting to be coached even when they want to be coached. Like, I need to get it together myself, and then I'll call my coach. I don't know if you find that, but it's kind of weird. It's like, yeah, I've been struggling with my wedge, but I've been putting a lot of time in. Can you take a look at things, Tony?
Yeah.
But they already spent like a month on the practice range with no coaching. They could have gotten a shortcut. So I call people. I have about 80 people that I try and stay in touch with over an extended period of time that are either full-time clients or just people I keep working with who were clients. So when I would call them, I would say, "Hey, Tony, how you doing?" And then Tony or whoever would get on the phone and say, "Oh, I'm in New York. I'm in an apartment, sharing an apartment with another buddy of mine. We can't go out. It's scary." They tell me things that are not good for the most part. Most people are not like, "Hey, I'm great."
Yeah.
Like at any time of the year. When people get on the phone with me, they want to tell me what's wrong. That's why I'm with them, basically. So then they would say to me, after telling me how things were not good, they'd say, "How are you doing, Bob?" And I'd say, "Great."
And that was
Great.
it.
No. I'd say, "Great." It's like, I'm really lucky. I have a great wife. We love being together. We've got a nice yard. We can get out. It's beautiful in Colorado. And then I started realizing about 3 weeks ago, it's not a good idea for me to be doing that. It's kind of like, I don't know, counting your money in front of poor people. Like, that in a way I was sort of like stepping on what they were feeling. So once I realized that, I decided that my answer, which you just asked me, how are things going, sort of, my answer is, well, every day I'm somewhere between a 6 and a 10. And on those days that I'm a 6 or a 7 or 8, I have a lot of tools that I can use to get myself up to 10. And even if it's temporary, I can be at a 10 for most of the day. And those things might be really simple things. It might be call a friend that I haven't spoken to, or write my gratitudes, or exercise, or maybe try and make a new dish. Joanne and I started on a mostly plant-based diet back in like February, just coincidentally. So I'm not a cook, but I'm learning. So, and these things bring me up to 10, or maybe going out and hugging a tree, or whatever the thing happens to be. So what that does with the person on the other side is they say, what? Like, they ask me, like,
how are you doing that?
What kind of tools? And then I get to coach them without them thinking I've just got it totally together all the time, which I don't. And people really appreciate that I don't say great, but that, hey, today I woke up, I was coughing in the middle of the night. I woke up and I thought maybe I have the virus, and I was bummed out.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's like, so they're not, so I'm with them. I'm in the same place, except I don't stay there. I will not stay there. It's not who I am. Yeah. So that's how things are right now. And as far as tennis goes, I'm not playing yet. It's being hard. I'm pushing it away. People are playing. Colorado's open right now. The courts are open. But I just don't, for me, I'm on one side of the fence, which is I want to stay safe. I don't want to take chances. I'm waiting another couple of weeks to see how things play out. If things keep going in a good direction, I probably will start playing. But right now, I go out and hit against the wall if I want to get the tennis thing going.
Yeah.
So I miss it. And I don't know if you followed, but I had the most amazing year of my life in tennis. I haven't lost a match since March of 2018 in national tournaments and Category 2 tournaments in the United States. And I've never had a run like that. And so, like Djokovic, I'm locked at number one because all the tournaments were shut down. So I may have the longest run of undefeated number one in history until they start playing tournaments again.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so that's what's happening.
That's an amazing story about your realization, though. That's excellent. Part of being a good coach is really sensing where people are.
Thanks. Yeah. I know that. Yeah. You're a great coach. So.
Well, a few months ago, all of a sudden, I started getting your emails about, Bob's quotes, and I can't remember exactly when they started. Infinite Days, right? But they're all really interesting and inspiring. I don't listen to all the songs, but some of the songs are good. I know. Talk a little bit maybe about the one today, which maybe in a way you already did, but then you had one other one you said you wanted to talk about. You might say a little mini bad word, but hey, that's okay.
Okay. Well, I'll give you the background, which is before I wrote my book for like 2 years, I had sent to just my clients a quote every day because I've always felt that people love quotes. And when they get a good quote, usually what they do is, I love this quote. And then they send it to everybody they know. Oh, this was a great quote. And when I said to people who were getting the quotes I was sending out, which were obviously quotes I was picking through my eyes, what I liked, how it fit into my life, but maybe it'll work in somebody else's life too. I said to them, you don't want to just send quotes to other people. If there's a quote that really resonates for you, something that you go like, yeah, I really want to be that way, or that's an attitude I want to have. I love that quote. I say, don't bother sending it to other people. Send it to yourself every morning mentally and get to work on becoming that. And as you work on that quote, it eventually folds into who you are. And then eventually you don't even have to remember the quote. You are that person. And really, my personal favorite quote, not the two we were just talking about, but my personal favorite quote is, and I have to paraphrase it, was said by Gandhi, who said that what I think, what I believe, what I feel, what I say and what I do is no different from who I am. I never need to remember anything. And I thought like, oh my God, I want to be that. I'm in the business of talking to people, and I want to make sure that I can grow to a place where what comes out of my mouth is Bob. It may not be my words, but it's like, it's just me. And I've worked on that for a long time. So if people do end up getting my quotes, please, don't treat them like a good book you read that you put up on the shelf and then forgot about. Take it out every day. It's like a good seminar or a good movie, like documentary or something that teaches you something. Practice what means something to you and you become it. So I was doing that a couple of years ago and then I stopped. It was just too much. Every single day it was too much. But then when the pandemic started and it was pretty apparent we were all going to be like, having some time on our hands or just home or whatever you want to say, I thought, well, I'm going to start reaching out again. And I've got a pretty big mailing list. So I wrote what I just said about when you get a quote, try to be it, try to work it, you will become the quote. And I had a couple of, quotes that people really responded to. And then about 5 days in, I started like March 15th, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And Joanne, my wife, said, are you going to do this every day? You're going to take weekends off? I said, no, there are no weekends and there are no weekdays right now. So how can I'm going to take off Saturday and Sunday. What's the difference? So by about the fifth or sixth one, somebody had said to me, hey, have you heard lately the Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes song, Wake Up Everybody? And I thought, wow, I'm going to put that in with one of my quotes. And I did. And people went nuts for it because it was a great song. It was a great meaning, here we are. We have to wake up to see what's going on. We can't deny it. And then I said, oh boy, I've opened a door, as I do usually. Now I've got to do a quote and a song. But I was having fun. I was wasting a lot of time going through YouTubes. I'd think of a song and then I would go like, oh my God, it was covered by so-and-so. Or I'm not just going to send the Beatles version. I'm going to send the Al Green version of this song. So that was great. And then about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I realized I have things to say too. So I started peppering in addition to a quote from somebody else, just a thought that I might have, because somebody once said, what about Bob's quotes? And I always never thought of myself as having quotes that people would quote, but I started doing that as well. So that's how this came about. I have once a week on Sundays, I sort of take a break by making it dance day. And I put in a song about dancing and say, today's a day to, grab somebody and dance one day a week. Let's do it. So, it's kind of growing in its own way. Now, you asked about today's quote, which you have it in front of you or no?
It's
I know what it's about, but I'm going to just pull it up. So just give me 1 second and I will just, okay.
Anybody notice what seemed like lots of time in the day been disappearing, right?
Well, okay.
Also about meditation.
The quote was half an hour's meditation each day is essential, except when you're busy. Then a full hour is needed.
Right.
So that's not mine. But then I wrote what I'm feeling, which is, did anybody else notice how what seemed to be lots of time in the day has been disappearing? It's time for a reset. And I'm going to give my best focus to who and what's most important right now. And it just was, striking me how I was walking slowly and breathing deeply, basically, through my days and getting everything done that I wanted to get done and not finishing everything, which was fine. But now, in the last couple of days, the week, maybe the change in people wanting to be outside or be with other people, I've been racing through the day. And when it comes to like 5, 6 o'clock, I'm like, oh my God, it's like I'm exhausted. So it's just a thought about be aware. If you feel you're rushing, you don't really have to. I mean, I'm not saying you don't have to rush to the market if you're out of food, but do you need to rush from one thing to the other when this is a bottomless pit that we've got here and we have time? So that's one, today's quote. Yeah. You had asked me before we got on the phone, like, what's your favorite quote? What are your favorite quotes? And I have many, many, many favorite quotes, but I will say that for the last 2 years, my favorite quote that I use as a coach with people all the time is actually from the show Ozark. I don't know if you've seen the show Ozark, but in the first season of it, there was a guy who lived in the basement of, the home of these people that have gotten into a lot of trouble. They've accidentally gotten involved with the drug cartel, and the wife is freaking out because she just saw somebody killed or something, and she's in the basement with this guy and she's freaking out. And he says to her, Wendy, lose your shit tomorrow. Today is not a good day to fall apart. So
you could do that every day, right?
That's right. And if we can put off losing it today to tomorrow, probably we won't even be losing it about what was going on today. There might be another thing. And it's great in sports. It's great in tennis when things are not going well. Hey, lose your mind tomorrow. In golf, you've had a bad, listen, Tom Brady, he could not lose it the other day. He'd have to put it off till tomorrow or he was going to be awful for 18 holes. And, he's pretty skilled at letting things go on a football field, but not on a golf course. So, but he did manage to turn it around.
Yeah,
and
that was pretty neat.
Yeah, so it's a very cool coaching tip. And I use it once. I'd like to use it every week just to remind people, but I won't do that. So
that's great. Well, you also shared, when I shared with you that, let's get together again, you sent me, or you told me about a presentation you did called Find Your Gold, I believe it is. And it was Finding Your Gold, and it is really great. I listened to it, actually watched it twice. Talk talk a little bit about what motivated you in terms of calling it that? And, you were very excited when you said, hey, I'd like to share some of the things from that.
Yeah, I would like to. And I hope I don't go on too long. So you'll, yank me if I do, please. But when you win a national championship in tennis, whether it's the U.S. Open or the national 70 and over indoor championships, whatever it is, if you win a national championship, you get a gold tennis ball. It's not real gold, and it's not the size of a tennis ball. It's really like more of like a large charm. But it's a really beautiful gold tennis ball in this beautiful mahogany box. It's really nice, and it's very special, and it represents winning a national championship. So I've been very fortunate in my life to have won quite a few of them. And they do, one of them means something to me. I have one that I keep out in front of me, the first one I won. Like in my office. And the rest of them are sitting in a box. And I thought, I'm going to give them away to people that are special people in my life that are sort of doing gold ball work in some way, whether it's one of my daughters who does gold ball work, raising 3 kids, not easy. Or if it's somebody who's done something extraordinary in the business world that has a lot of humanity to it. I get to decide. I'm the only vote on who gets the ball.
Sure, they're your balls.
They're mine, right.
Yeah, right.
So I've given them to my wife, Carol, who passed away, of course, and then my wife, Joanne, who I've been married to now for 9 years. And I've given it to my 2 daughters and to her daughters as well, and some other people. But my grandchildren, they know they're in line to get one. They know about it. And, they're like, my oldest grandchildren are 12. And both girls, they both got one a couple of years ago, maybe when they were 10. And, and I write something personal for them about it. It's about these qualities and the way you do things and your persistence and so forth. So my grandson, Soren, who's out here in Colorado, plays hockey, and he's 9 years old. And he said to me, when am I getting my gold ball? And I said, you don't just get a gold ball. You have to be exhibiting qualities. So that led to a conversation that we had. And he was like, I know, you've told me. Okay, fine. But when am I getting the ball? So that's what triggered the idea to do a talk about winning your gold ball. And so it started off was called Winning Your Gold Ball in Life. And then if the talk was about tennis players, about tennis in life. So I was going to Tennis Congress where I'm on this incredible faculty, and I do my talk 3 times. It was pretty good, well received. People liked it. But to me, a talk is only good if people are changed, not if it just has, that was interesting, and then they forget about it. So I was doing it one more time here in Boulder, and that was when I changed the title initially to The Truth About Winning Your Gold Ball, because if people had asked me 6 months ago or 8 months ago, I would have said, well, I'm persistent, and I fight hard, and I eat well, and I exercise, and I thought that's what all of my opponents do. Why have I won so many? And I started to scratch around, and what happened was when I did this final talk, which they changed the title to something like Winning Your Gold Ball or something, which was fine with me, what I realized was, as I look back on my career, both as a coach and as a tennis player, was that there were 3 things that were truths of what I believe enabled me to have a lot of success in performance-driven stuff. And they surprised me. But the first one was, I realized that in everything in my life that I'm aware of, at least as an adult, the idea of love the journey, or the journey is more important than the destination, we've all heard it. We've seen it on bumper stickers. It's on greeting cards, and people talk about it a lot. And I realized I do. I really do. And my whole experience in losing a lot of tennis at the beginning, I liked that time.
And you did lose a few times in the beginning, as you talked about, right, in the presentation.
Well, when I was 35, from 35 to 40, I never won a match in a national tournament. And then when I was 40, I won my first match in a national tournament. Didn't mean that I didn't win on, say, the local level, but that was not the level that I was aspiring to be in. So, so here I was actually enjoying it, not always liking it, but like it was okay. I'm okay with the journey. And when I went through losing my wife, Carol, that was a very, very difficult journey. I didn't like it, but I didn't feel that it was something that wasn't a valuable time in my life. And that made it easier for me to get through it. So that was the roughest time, but all the tennis matches I play have a lot of stuff within a match where it's not a good journey. And people are big shots about it. Oh, I love the journey. But as soon as things go bad, no, this is awful. People on Wall Street. I love it when I make money. I hate it when I don't. Well, that means you're in the wrong business because you're going to lose money almost half the time. And don't play tennis because half the points you play, you lose. Everybody, half. Yeah. Roger Federer won like 52% of all the points when he won the Australian Open. 52% in 7 matches. And don't play golf if you can't take a bad hole. And enjoy the ride. And then you will get to the destination, which doesn't even last that long anyhow. You get to the 19th hole, you talk about it for a day or an hour, and then you get home and you're taking the garbage out. So, so that was the first thing that I was saying to people, really check it out and see if you love the journey of what you're working on. And if you love the journey, you have a better chance of having a high performance experience and outcomes that may be rewarding or may not, but it won't ruin it for you. The second thing that I realized was that in my development, both as a player and as a coach, instead of adding things to get better, I kept getting rid of things that were interfering. So, you know, sports psychology 101, early on, I realized, yeah, I have a lot of negative thinking going on, a lot of negative self-talk. Let me see if I can get rid of that. And you know from being in this business that just replacing a negative thought with a positive thought doesn't really work because the negative thought hasn't gone away. Maybe it's been pushed down, but it still pops out. So what I found was by training out the negative thought, what was left was more of a vacuum. And into the vacuum would flow not negative thoughts that might not have even been the opposite thought, but just some more better thought. And I got rid of frustration, and I got rid of irritation with myself, and I got rid of self-judgment, and I got rid of caring what people thought about me, more or less. I got rid of having this like impatience in getting better. And I got rid of more and more and more stuff. And the more stuff I got rid of, an interesting thing happened. The vacuum ended up being pretty much being free. I was free of thoughts that were interfering, thoughts, feelings, and even ways of doing things. You know, like, I'm going to try an ace just because I was frustrated that I wasn't winning points. I would get rid of all these pieces that were interfering, and that would leave me with a very, very peaceful, free experience. I got rid of tension. I mean, tension, you know, it does just happen, but it's something that comes as a result of us thinking a certain way and then feeling fear or worry. So I was able to get rid of tension. Now, I can't say that I'm free 100%, but I'm pretty free on the court. And if you watch me play, you say, this guy doesn't look like he cares. People say that to me a lot. And then I say, well, you know, you say that, but like, I must care because look at my results seem to indicate that I'm really putting a lot of energy into trying to get good outcomes. So that was a very, very revealing thing for me personally that accelerated my own development as a player. And then the third thing was I just feel there's so much value in writing, for each of us to write, whether we're a good writer or not, for us to get our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences down on paper. That everybody, I think, that's a lot, but I think most people should every single day write something. It could be one sentence. Boy, I'm glad that I remembered to take umbrella to work today. Fine, that's fine. I mean, it's a gratitude. So you wrote a gratitude. Not bad. Good thing to do. Or maybe I had an experience playing a match last winter where everything went really, really smoothly for me. I really had nothing of what I felt consequence to write about, but I write after every match, and then I send it out as a journal to thousands of people.
Yeah.
So what I wrote was, I don't really have much to write about today, but I think what I'll do is I'm going to write down all the things that I did leading up to the match today, things that I just did, because maybe there'll be some nugget there of something I didn't realize contributed to me playing what felt like a perfect match. So I wrote down, I had scrambled eggs today, and I didn't have bacon. Okay, maybe that was something. I don't know. Or when I stretched, I did it off on an area where there was just beautiful grass and I could see the mountains. Or I wore my favorite shirt today. Whatever. I wrote down 10 things. And then I started doing it regularly, writing down on my good days, what are some things that I did? And maybe over 5 or 6 good days, maybe I'll see some commonalities. And then those can be a template for me about what I ought to be doing more often, or maybe before every match, or every session that I do with somebody. And it was, again, it's a very, very revealing thing. People say, I don't write well, and I don't have the time, I don't know what to write. Well, I can tell you, if you just write every day for about a week, a sentence, 2, a paragraph, a couple of bullet points, after a week, it's not that hard, just like other things. You just start getting into it. And for me, writing has been one of my greatest personal tools for being effective at tennis and work and life in general.
That's amazing. Now, one of the things back to the first principle. One of the things that really caught me was your little story about talking to Billie Jean King, which I thought was really cool, and what she said about her trophies and things. Could you share that? Because I thought that was really neat.
Yeah. This was amazing. I was fortunate enough to be sitting in a room with a bunch of teaching tennis pros, and Billie Jean was there presenting to us at a time when Billie Jean, she's always been bigger than life and very, very sought after. But I mean, now she's like, it's hard to get close to her, but she's so wanted in so many ways. So she was talking to us and she said, and I just want to remind you all, make sure you tell all of your students that it's not about the trophies. It's about the experiences. It's about the people you meet along the way, the places you get to go, the wins and losses, the training, the falling down and getting up. And she listed all these things that were part of the journey. And I was sort of smug, but not really, because I had at that point won 2 national titles. And I kind of already had this clue that, yeah, it feels really good, but I'm not even as good as I can be. So how could it really define me? And I used to say to people, well, it's like, yeah, it's great to win, but I really like training and stuff like that. But I didn't really get it. So I raised my hand and she said, yes. I said, well, Billie, it's easy for you to say that. You've won 22 Wimbledon titles. So it's easy for you to say it's no big deal. But what about for the people that are not winning the trophies? And she said to me, you're right. I've won 22 Wimbledon titles. That's why people should believe me. They shouldn't discount me. I'm not lying. I'm speaking my experience. All of my trophies, all of them, are in boxes in my basement. But look at who I am now. Look at what I've become as a result of this journey I've been on. I have a voice that can change the world.
Yeah.
And look, she is the only woman who has a full sporting center named for her, the Billie Jean King Tennis Center. There is no other woman who has a sporting facility, and especially U.S. Open is enormous, named for her. It came because of the journey she was on. The journey gave her victories, but she lost way more tournaments than she won. She lost way more points than she won. She lost lots of sets, but she did win. Maybe she played 60 Grand Slams. She didn't win 60 Grand Slams. Maybe she won 30, but then she lost 30. So, it was great. And I was getting an award at the U.S. Open about 8 years ago, and she introduced me. And then she sat down, and she was sitting there, and, busy as she is, I'm telling this story, as I just told you, and I look over at her, and she's chatting it up with people because she's so busy, all these guests she has. I said, Billie, I'm telling a story about you. Listen. So, yeah.
You're a gutsy person.
Well, I've never been shy about going up to people to introduce myself to people I want to meet. And I was in the tennis industry for almost 40 years, and I would see Billie Jean King at conventions or a tournament, and I'd always walk up to her and say, "Hi, Billie, I'm Bob Litwin." And when I was like 16 years old in camp, and you were 19, and you were Billie Jean Moffitt, I used to follow you. And she was like, "Oh, yeah, oh, great, nice to see you." And then like a year later, "Hey, Billie, it's Bob Litwin." She says, "Oh, yeah, have we met?" It's like, and I did that so many times. But now I'm happy to say I'm on a committee, a charity committee with her. So she knows me now. So
that's fabulous.
Yeah, so I don't need courage to say anything to her now. But
I will say that, you already spoke about the one or two things that really hit me the most about the presentation, and it was in particularly getting rid of things that interfere and train those out. You also talked about the muse, and you might talk a little bit about that. That's not many people talk about the muse. I've read some things about writers, and they talk about their muse a lot, but I don't know if athletes do that much.
Yeah. Well, I do. I'm an athlete. I'm also a writer, but I don't think that I understood the muse that well while I was writing my book. I understood resistance really well because I spent a lot of time fighting to write. But when I started to find my stride in tennis, I knew that my very best matches, of which they were, they weren't totally all the time by any means. They were, somewhat infrequent, my best matches. That on those days, things pretty much flowed. Decisions came pretty easily. And a lot of the things that would be sort of what we would call the zone in sports or transcendence in meditation, where things just happened. And I started to think about writing, and that the muse, which is basically your creative self, within you, there's a part of you that creates, that's intuitive, instinctive, where we have brilliant ideas in the shower. The muse will come out if you don't bug it. Like if you're very self-critical, the muse hides. It doesn't want to come out. It's a very, very it's a very, very gentle part of who we are. And it doesn't really like a lot of negativity. It doesn't like a lot of thinking about the past and future. It doesn't like a lot of things that we tend to live with. So when playing matches and finding freedom from thoughts, both good and bad thoughts, because good thoughts interfere also. They're in the way of the zone or transcendence, and they're in the way of your creative self coming out and playing with you. And your creative self is the one that, when playing, decides to pull a certain club out, even though your caddy and everybody else would say, no, bad idea. But there's something in you that says, no, this is my Phil Mickelson self. This is my Bubba self that does the thing that may not be traditional. And The muse is maybe in the same bucket as zone, as really like just being like in the flow state or in transcendence. And it's a very special place. And it's there in some experiences that all of us have. When we're taking a shower, our muse often comes out. When we're getting a massage and we're thinking, oh my God, I hope I can remember what I just thought of. It's like, give me a pen, I have to write it down. Or walking on the beach or being in the mountains, which tends to promote these experiences of presence and quiet and silence, even though it's still a dynamic state. It's not one of like almost falling asleep. When Michael Jordan played in the zone in the famous flu, when he had the flu, and he scored like 44 points while they were giving him like intravenous fluids on timeouts, his muse came out, or he was in flow, or he was transcended. They're not all that different. And I hope I get a chance to mention something else about transcendence if I have time.
In fact, I think I think there's a new book called Transcendence that I just heard about today that I put in my Audible list that I'm going to look up. Somebody said it was really good. But anyhow, yeah, well, you could talk about it now if you want.
Okay.
Because, actually, I think we've covered almost everything except kind of my last question that I wanted to talk about. But go ahead.
Well, let's put that aside for a second, if you don't mind. I'd like to share this.
Yeah.
So in 1975, I took transcendental meditation. It became popular because there was this Maharishi from India who actually was a physics graduate student who, in his studies of physics, was studying the mind and levels of consciousness. And he was studying a community called the Vedic community, which were people that seemed to be high all the time, but not high in a druggy way, just high on life, happy, content, peaceful, and yet a community that was still gathering food, protecting themselves, raising children, teaching their children. They seemed to have like plugged into something. So he started studying it. The Beatles ended up hearing about this guy. They went to India, they spent time with him, and then when they came to the United States, they were a big voice. They were talking about transcendental meditation, and it got very popular at that time. And I took a course, very short course, like 4 one-hour sessions, and I started doing it, and I stopped because it was hard for me, and I didn't have the time. It required 20 minutes twice a day, and I don't know, it just felt like I was sitting there with my eyes closed, and I don't know what was happening. So I stopped doing it. But over the years, I still meditated in other ways, on and off, for different periods of time, whether it was breathing exercises or visualization or repeating a number or a word, a mantra over and over again. And those were fine and they were helpful. And I was getting better at like being able to like sort of not have as many thoughts going in my head, but they always were there anyhow. I mean, they do, no matter what you do, thoughts show up. So one of the things I'd been unable to do in my career as a coach with people was to convince people to meditate. And I realized after this whole thing happened with me later, that it was because all the things that I was coaching people to do were things that I really did well, or learned to do, practiced, and they were part of my personal practice. But meditation, I was never that committed. So in February, I was in Florida playing a tournament, and I went to visit somebody, and his next door neighbor, who he introduced me to, said, "Bob, I've been following you in your tennis journals for years. You must meditate, right?" I said, "Why would you ask me that?" It's like, of all things. He says, "Well, it's just the way you write, and you write about experiences that seem like transcending experiences." And I said, "Well, I do kind of." And he says, "Well, I actually lived with the Maharishi when I was in my early 20s, and I was one of the early teachers of transcendental meditation in the United States. Would you be okay with me checking your meditation?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, cool, sure." So we sat down, and he had this method for checking it. It wasn't like he hooked me up to an EKG. He just, said, close your eyes, and then for 2 minutes, and he said, open your eyes, tell me what you were doing, and back and forth. And he shared some stuff with me that was really interesting. And the biggest thing he shared with me was like, the piece that you're missing the most is transcendental meditation is easy. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And he explained it to me. And, if people are interested, I can share that with them as well. But I'm not a TM teacher, but I started to do TM. I came back to New York to work. And this guy introduced me to a guy named Bob Roth, who's the most famous and sought after meditation teacher in the world. He's been doing it for 50 years. He's like a very, very normal, straight guy, not woo-woo at all, not wearing a gown, he hasn't changed his name. He's Bob Roth from Marin County, who went to Berkeley. And he's taught Ringo and Paul McCartney and Oprah and Tom Hanks and Ray Dalio and LeBron James and Kobe Bryant when he was alive. He taught all the most famous people. And he and I became friendly over the last 3 months. We haven't met in person, but we've gotten very, very close. And I've been doing transcendental meditation now twice a day since the beginning of this pandemic. And it's life-changing. And of all of the things, every tool that I've used with people, and I probably could list 200 different ones or more, I've never experienced one that seems to be able to cover more bases in terms of overall performance, which means, what I mean by performance, how you do things, that contribute to high levels of the way you do things, and as a result, really, really fabulous results from doing things in a certain way, whether it's in sports or business or life. And it's been an extraordinary period for me. And I believe that, and this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, I believe that this is the next chapter of my life, not teaching it, but really spreading the word about transcendental meditation, which is such a wonderful thing to do. And the motivation of the people who have been teaching it is to help people. I mean, their biggest thrust is on helping people who have post-traumatic stress disorder experiences, which are the vets for sure. It's all the medical community right now. It's children who are in underprivileged area, who are underprivileged and are living in the worst places in the country and the world that are experiencing PTSD because they come home and they have one parent that's suffering, and people in the prisons. But who of us is not going through trauma right now? So I'm very excited. I'm getting involved. I don't know what I'm going to do. I never know what I'm going to do until I start doing it. But I just, I'm saying to people, if anybody's interested, just take a look at it. Bob Roth wrote a book that's called Strength in Silence. It's a really sweet book. It doesn't teach you to meditate, but it's a lot of cool interviews with people whose names you'll know and their experience. And these are people that never had time. Believe me, no time at all. So it's not a pitch. It's not a sell on my part. It's just, I love to be able to put it out there, and I've been putting it out there with the people I know, and person by person is trying it, and some people try it, and it's it's not for them. But for some people, they're sending me notes saying, thank you, this is the greatest gift you've ever given me. And when I hear that, I know I'm on to something. So, yeah. And when you have an experience, when you do TM, you're actually finding out how to get, it's not the objective, but you find out how you end up spending more time in the zone, because transcendence is that mental state. And it is tons of scientific data that supports it. The testing that's been done on people that are doing TM is just wonderful. So there you go.
I really appreciate you being willing to share that today. Another book that I'm going to buy for sure, but maybe in a few months you'll come back when you feel like you want to share at another level some things about this related to sports performance.
Of course.
You
I'm
know,
always
and performance in life, so.
I'm always willing to come back to it.
Yeah.
And really, if anybody is turned on just by the idea of TM and they've read the book or they want to know more, really, they can email me, and I will pass on to you when you can meditate on your own computer with Bob Roth, who's doing it twice a day now, or several times. It's repeated several times. And it's like it's not limited to people who have taken the TM course at all. He's really happy for people to hear about it. And, at the point at which things open up, if people want to take the TM course, they can or not. It's such a wonderful gift. And I can give you the information. So, can I give my email? Everybody my email?
Well, actually, I was going to put that in. You can do it. You can do it now too, in case somebody doesn't look at the web link. But go ahead.
Okay, so the one I'm going to give is the one that you may not have, which is just litwinbob@gmail.com.
Great.
And if they want to get the daily emails, they should just email me too. So I'm happy to put people on, and the more the merrier, and share it if you want.
Yeah.
It's helping people. So, and it makes me feel good to help people.
That's great. Well, and you clearly do. Well, this is a good stopping point, I think, Bob. Like I always do, I'm going to put connections to you, to your website, to get your book. Who knows if there's another book coming someday? Haha. Who knows?
No comment.
No comment. Right. And also your email address. But it was a very inspiring day. Thanks a lot for this today.
Tony, thank you so much for asking me to come on. I really appreciate it. I love being able to have a place to share with people some ideas that may help them live some of the best stories of their lives. So thank you so much, and always a pleasure to do it. Thanks, buddy.
The Golf Improvement Podcast is sponsored by Tony Wright and Game Improvement Golf. Tony creates exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores.
Thank you, Bob. I'm glad and fortunate that you and I connected at this time for this interview, and for all of the information and valuable insights you shared. I put a link in the show notes to Bob's website, and also to where you can buy his book, Live the Best Story of Your Life. In addition, if you want to reach out to Bob and get his Bob's Quotes emails, and also other inspiring email posts that he creates, email him at litwinbob@gmail.com. I'll also put that link in the show notes. And as he mentioned in the interview, if you want to learn more about transcendental meditation and the value it might have for you, you can also ask him about this in an email. My shout out today, well, I really don't have one because of everything that's going on, except to go back to the quote that I mentioned earlier in this post. It's a tough time. People are on edge and enraged. Seek to understand and to relate and to find tolerance. Well, that's it for today. My good and inspiring friend Gavin Parker, PGA member and Academy Director at the Salisbury Golf Academy at the Salisbury Golf Club in Midlothian, Virginia, has been taking a deep dive into the concept of flow and how it can influence his golf and his life. I'm excited to learn more from him. See you in 2 weeks, and stay safe.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com